Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate, day number 588, Thursday, October the 25th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. How low will they go? How far will the desperate Dems go to get back into power? I'm talking about their latest stunt. Sending packages that look like pipe bombs to the Rotten Reverend Clinton, Barack Hussein Obama, along with Maxine Waters and a few others. And of course the letter to CNN with a suspicious white powder. Now all of these were sent by way of the USPS, U.S. Postal Service. None of the devices detonated or activated upon delivery. All the packages seem to have been sent by the same individual or group of individuals, and the packages were very similar to the one sent to George Soros on Monday. Who would benefit from this activity? Who would benefit? Cui bono? The return address on these packages? Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz. Of course, the left-wing media were quick to blame President Trump, and within minutes of the reporting of this story, the hashtag MAGA bomber popped up. The pipe bomb looked silly, right out of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. The only thing that the pipe bomb didn't have was Acme written on the side of them. It was actually, these bombs, if you've seen the pictures, so-called pipe bombs, were actually less sophisticated looking than a couple of flares taped together with an old wind-up clock. Cartoonish looking at best. What was the motive for this ridiculous sideshow? Who would benefit? Probably not a Republican or a Trump supporter. What was the motive? Well, it certainly wasn't to cause harm, only to scare someone, assuming you'd look at either of those things and take them seriously. We know that the Kavanaugh fiasco blew up on the left. The salsa invasion is in the process of blowing up on the left. And this stunt will also blow up on the left, because it's all coming from the same place. I hope they find the perps, or the perp, who did this, and if and when we do, it will be some left-wing nutcase. The only question is, will that left-wing nutcase have ties to Democratic operatives, or will it be the lone wolf? It does not appear that too many people have bit on this one, because it's juvenile and comical at best. No person of reasonable intelligence thinks that the Rotten Reverend Clinton or Barack Obama opens their own mail. Or CNN. And by the way, John Brennan doesn't work at CNN. He works at MSNBC. There are lots of problems with these packages, we'll call them, and the way that they were delivered. But no shit Sherlock Ray has made a statement that they're all over this at the FBI, and they'll get it figured out. This particular stunt, like all the rest, was designed for maximum political media optics, with zero chance of injury to anyone who would have received any of this these ridiculous props, essentially. Really bad props. Now, They will likely find within the next week, at least, they'll have a couple suspects, because these particular devices were so ridiculous that they did not even have to detonate them. They just looked at them and said, huh, I'm pretty sure these things don't blow up. They're a joke. Because normally when they get a device that looks like it could blow up, they blow it up. And in doing so, they blow up a lot of the evidence. They get bits and pieces of stuff and they try to put it back together, try to figure out what they can. But when they get things like this that are so ridiculous that they're not even close to looking like something that could detonate, they don't have to detonate them. So what they're able to do is that they have them intact without being blown up, which means they can take them apart and look at every piece and part and get a pretty good idea of where the stuff came from, where it was purchased, maybe when it was purchased. There's various things that they can do to investigate to get a pretty good idea. Now, the only other option that they'll look at when they see this type of stuff is they'll say, okay, well, maybe this is all decoy. Someone sends out a bunch of crazy stuff that looks stupid and silly and childish, and then they follow up after we've come out, and said, hey, this stuff was all ridiculous, it was cartoonish, and then a week later they send out some real stuff and do some damage. This is the one thing they're probably looking at. But if it's not that, and it probably isn't, if it's not that, then it's just somebody looking for some media attention for a day or two to knock some story off the front page. A story that's not playing well for the Democrats, such as the salsa invasion. This was more of a bad joke than anything. But it served its purpose. It got a full day of media attention and took everyone's mind off the failing effort south of the border, which is also becoming a joke. So I do hope that they get to this person or persons behind this within the next few days or week, and I think there's a good chance they can, because again, they did not have to detonate these devices. They've got all the pieces. They can probably get pretty close to figuring out where this came from. And I'm about 99% sure it'll turn out to be some left-wing kook. And the only question is this left-wing kook operating on their own, or are they connected to individuals who we're all familiar with, who are left-wing operatives? That is the question of the day. Now, let's get on to the other hoax, that being the salsa invasion. We know that Mike Pence spoke with the president of Honduras, and the president of Honduras told Mike Pence that the caravan was organized by left-wing political groups and funded by Venezuela. Two of the activists involved here are very well-known muckrakers and have tried these types of caravan stunts before, and they have been arrested in the process. So, where is the funding coming from? Because these activists have to be getting the money to fund this from somewhere. They're not rich. They're activists, but they're not activist billionaires or millionaires. They're poor activists. They're the front men. Somebody's got to be sending them the money to make all this stuff happen. That is where they need to be investigating, and I'm sure there's some pretty good ideas of where that money may be coming from. I think the best guess is from Soros affiliated groups, or possibly it could be the Chinese, and this could be them trying to cause problems between us and Mexico because we signed the free trade agreement, or the trade agreement with Mexico. We're getting along good with that president. We're having the trade issues with China. Maybe this is some way that China, because China is very intertwined. They're very active in Venezuela. They have a lot going on in Venezuela. So I think it's most likely that this is just your run-of-the-mill political op, pre-election political op by left-wing zealots probably funded by Soros and his friends, which would include the rotten Reverend Clinton, Barack Hussein Obama, and all the rest. Or it's a Chinese plot, and it's targeted to be a pushback against what Trump is doing to try to resolve the trade issue we have with China. And they're using Mexico to try to damage relations between the U.S. and Mexico, to try to stir the pot and just create problems and chaos. That's kind of what the Chinese do. So, I'm sure that we'll get to the bottom of it eventually, but I guess the question of the day is, so what does Trump do, and the Republicans, what do they do to make sure that this political stunt does not yield anything for the demo commies? Well, I think what you want to avoid is two things. Number one, you want to avoid giving the left-wing media all the photo ops of any harsh treatment of these people as they arrive to the border. You don't want them getting photo ops of you ripping a baby out of some woman's arms or some guy's arms. You don't want that. But what you also don't want is to have a Mexican standoff at the border where the UN has to come in, set up tent cities, and it ends up in a week after week after week after week fiasco at the border. That won't affect the elections necessarily, but it's just, you don't want that happening. So, what's the best way to deal with the situation, and how will it likely be dealt with? Well, I think the best way to deal with it is to do just what Trump has said. Send your border patrol down there, every man you got, along with your reserves, and then your regular military behind them. Do not allow these individuals to cross any of the 17 checkpoints across the border or anywhere in between. Do not let them pass. Then, once they've all been accumulated there along the border and you've got your eye on them and you've assessed how many there are exactly and you've filled in all the gaps, you've made sure they haven't slipped between, because there'll probably be stragglers that'll try to break away from the main group and try to find entry away from the main bodies. So you want to make sure that you have all that coverage done, and once you've effectively covered that, then the next thing you want to do is most likely, and this is probably already happening, probably setting up some temporary detention centers. Could be on either side of the border, I would assume on the U.S. side of the border. Then you send down about 100 or so JAG officers. And you take these people one by one, bring them to the detention center, and within 24 to 48 hours have them sit down with a JAG officer where they'll be deemed unqualified for illegal entry, in which case you put them right on a C-130 and ship them back home. Bring them into detention centers very briefly, 2 to 5 days, they're back on a plane and headed home. Don't let the situation get exacerbated on the border. Don't take any aggressive action. Just move them through, process them very, very quickly at the border, and send them back home. That will be a big win. It will also almost absolutely guarantee that this stunt will have backfired on the Dems, because it will probably ratchet up the pressure on everyone in Washington, especially Republicans, to build that wall, to provide all the funding right now for that wall. And this time next year, that wall will be done, built, because of the backfire of this stupid, childish, sophomoric stunt. The Democrats are not only incompetent, they're stupid, and they're a little ugly on the side. I've never seen a political group, organization, or party fail repeatedly, so often, and so badly. I've never seen it before. I've seen Republicans, I've seen Democrats make stupid political decisions, do stupid things, get caught. But what I've never seen before is a never-ending string after string of events over a period of, in this case, over 2 years, where it's just one massive fail after another. excuse me, they cannot get anything right. Even simple political dirty tricks they can't seem to pull off anymore. These are highly incompetent people. And it might be because their rage for Trump, their hatred for Trump, has somehow caused them to just act out with total raw emotion without any thought about what they're doing. Because the Democrats used to be pretty good at political dirty tricks. But obviously they've got the junior varsity in there calling the shots because they just continue to fail time after time after time. These political stunts are just not working. They're backfiring every time. Whether it was Kavanaugh, the salsa invasion, or this little stunt of yesterday. One backfire after another. And the evidence is in the recent polling. We have Josh Hawley now up by 7 points over McCaskill. He's pulling away, and she's done. We have Heidi Heitkamp, whose campaign is all but in suspended mode, now down 16 to Kramer. We have Marsha Blackburn pulling away from Bredesen. In the only two races of those Senate races that were supposed to be nail-biters, the only two left, really, are the Indiana and Montana races. Indiana, because you have a Libertarian getting about 8, 9, 10% of the vote right now, which is hurting the Republican, which I perfectly well understand as a Libertarian. But what usually happens, and I'll tell you how it is from the Libertarian point of view. As a Libertarian, a lot of times you'll just want to go out and vote your conscience. I know I like to do that. But when you get down to a close election on the last day or two, Libertarians that come and vote. Now, the ones who voted 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, or whenever early voting happened, maybe they're voting that way. But when you get to election day, even coming from a hardcore Libertarian like myself, if I think that my voting for my Libertarian, is going to elect a Democrat, I don't do it. I vote for the Republican and hold my nose. Stop the Democrat. And that's what I think will happen. I think in the last day, I think on election day, these independents or libertarian-leaning people in Indiana will break for the Republican in Indiana. Montana is still tough. The latest polls from there are from about, looks like 6 days ago. So Trump was just in Montana. We'll have to see. He should get, there should be a 5-point bump coming up there shortly. But that is still a close race in Montana. But all the rest that you see the Republicans pulling away. Rodenstein. Well, now the hearing has been canceled. The hearing that was supposed to happen was canceled, and it was apparently canceled by Goodlatte and Gowdy because they said they did not have enough time. Why? Because Rodenstein had to go to an awards ceremony for DOJ employees. Oh, God knows there's a lot of great awards that are going to be handed out to DOJ employees for their fantastic job that they did. And who better than to pass out the award and be the presenter than Rodenstein? Now, a lot of people think, on the surface, it certainly looks like to me as well, it's just a ploy to postpone till after the midterms. But we're learning that the deal that was previously cut, which kept Meadows and Jordan out, was cut by Goodlatte and Gowdy. Was presented by Goodlatte and Gowdy. We're also hearing that this cancellation was presented by Goodlatte and Gowdy. Now, don't you think when they set this thing up, they told Rodenstein that he'd have to be available? I mean, generally these hearings go on for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours sometimes. Especially when there's a lot to cover, as there is in this case. What are the odds that Goodlatte and Gowdy would forget to ask Rodenstein if he had anything on his schedule for that day, such as an award ceremony? I think very, very low likelihood of that. There's something going on here. There's something going on. There's some reason that they want to. There's some reason. Now keep in mind, they wanted Rodenstein in there bad 3-4 weeks ago. because they probably thought that what they would get out of him that they could use as political fodder in the days or weeks before the election. They were hoping to have it as an election ammunition. But now they don't seem to be interested. What does that tell you? It tells you that Republicans, including Good Latin Gowdy, who of course are not even running for re-election, but someone within the structure, within the Republican structure in the House, or maybe even within the Oval Office, believe that they no longer need to take the risk of a Rodenstein situation, because remember, these things can also backfire. And maybe they're looking at things going, hey, you know what? I think we got this thing solid. We're going to win seats in the Senate, and we're going to hold on to the House. So maybe this Rodenstein thing that we thought may be needed, maybe it's not needed. And it could be some backfire. It could be some blowback. Maybe we better wait till after the election. Plus, after the election, Rodenstein, I'm sure, has been pressured by Trump to make Uncle Bob end his witch hunt right after the midterms, and we've, of course, gotten word that that's likely the case. The IG is supposed to come out with his report very shortly after the midterms. So a lot of these questions would be answered. I think that the Trump White House might be involved in what's going on here. I think Trump and Rodenstein had a heart-to-heart, and I think Trump laid out to Rodenstein exactly what his situation was. And I think now he's working for Trump. And I think Trump's probably guiding this thing through Rodenstein a little more than what we believe. Because you're not hearing Trump say anything about Rodenstein. And the last two times that this has been a story, generally Trump would talk about it at a rally, but he hasn't. Since he went on that little plane ride with Rodenstein, he has said nothing about Rodenstein other than to say, thumbs up. Now he knows Rodenstein tried to wire him up, frame him. He knows he signed off on the FISA warrants to spy on him. He knows he's part of all of this. Why would Trump suddenly be giving protection to Rodenstein? The only reason I can think of is if he's had a conversation with Rodenstein, made it perfectly clear to Rodenstein exactly what condition and position he's in, and probably told Rodenstein, now you're going to play it the way I want it played. And so it's likely that Trump is now essentially controlling this thing through Rodenstein. And that's why he's not making any noise about it. That's my best guess. That is my best guess. I know one thing. There's something going on here besides they just canceled the meeting. There's something else going on here besides, oh, we just decided that it's just going to be Good Latin Gowdy asking questions. No, I'm sorry. I was suspicious when the first thing happened, but now this, not buying it. There's something else going on. And based on the way Trump's behaving, I'm thinking it's being directed by Trump through Rodenstein. That's what it looks like to me. We're going to find out shortly after the midterm elections. And I have a feeling that there's sentiment going on in Washington, certainly within the Trump administration, within his inner circle, within the Republican inner circle in Washington, that they're starting to feel pretty good about how the midterms are going to go. Not just in the Senate, but in the House. Papadopoulos was on Hannity with his wife. Papadopoulos and his wife were on Hannity. She never really says very much. I just think that Hannity likes looking at her. It would be my only guess. She was on with Papadopoulos on another show, and she just sat there. They didn't even ask her a question. I said, they just want her there. Whenever they do an interview, she's there, even though she never says anything or is even asked a question. Very interesting. But Papadopoulos and his wife were on with John Solomon on Hannity. I hope most of you saw that. And what happened there was John Solomon finally got around to doing a very good interview with Papadopoulos, which resulted in him writing a piece in The Hill. So Sean Hannity reading this story in The Hill, there was some very interesting stuff that came out there that caught Hannity's ear, so he invited Solomon on with Papadopoulos and his wife. And we learned a couple of things. I learned a couple of things, let's put it that way. Well, we learned that Papadopoulos is no longer just sitting back passively accepting his fate. He's now basically saying he's going after the people he thinks who set him up. He's not going to take it lying down anymore. He's not just going to let it go away. He has decided, after giving it thought and doing a lot of research, along with his wife, who I think is really pushing him, to go after, and this is his words, go after the people who tried to set him up. In fact, did set him up. He now wants to go on offense, as Carter Page has done. He's on offense too. Now, we learned some things, more details about his conversations with Halper, and he continues to say that he recalls very, very well that meeting or conversation he had with Alexander Down the Hatch Downer, and he continued to say, "I'm certain that I didn't say anything to Downer about Russia having Clinton emails or anything about that we never even talked on that topic. We talked about a lot of other things, and that never even came up." He's certain of that, willing to swear under oath. But we got more details about Halper, and I think that what we're getting here, and I think what John Solomon is exposing in his story, was that 20 pages of the FISA document that we're wanting to see, we understand there's exculpatory evidence in there. We've basically been told that. It appears that one of the valuable pieces of exculpatory evidence in there is the fact that Papadopoulos told the FBI that he told Halper to stop bugging him, that he didn't know anything about, that he was being pushed by Halper, constantly prodded by Halper to talk about this Russia having these emails and things and such. And Papadopoulos apparently made it clear to the FBI that he told Halper to bug off, to stop bothering him, that he knew nothing about Russia hacked emails, that it would be treason, that he didn't know any Russians, that he wasn't involved in any of this, and this was just crazy stuff, and he really wanted Halper just to leave him the hell alone. And the FBI has this information, but yet they went ahead and used that to launch their investigation and to continue surveillance, including likely upon Papadopoulos himself. So Papadopoulos basically told the FBI that he thought he was being set up, thought he was being recorded, was being prodded about all this Russia stuff, didn't know anything, told their informant, Mr. Halper and Mr. Downer, told their informants that he didn't know anything, and he kept getting pushed. And that never made it to the FISA court. That's a biggie. And Papadopoulos knows that. Likely so do his lawyers. Papadopoulos has probably been told, you're in for a big payday. Now, Carter Page, I think, has got money. I don't think he cares about the payday. He just wants justice. Papadopoulos probably cares about the money, and you can bet his wife does. So, Papadopoulos said that one of the things Halper said directly to him on one of their meetings was Pop said, Halper told him, he said, "It's great that Russia is helping you and your campaign, isn't it, George?" It's great that Russia is helping you and your campaign, isn't it, George? To which point Papadopoulos said, "I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. What you are talking about is treason, and I have nothing to do with that. Stop bothering me about it." Papadopoulos, and Papadopoulos says he told that to the FBI. He also says that he was approached by approximately 6 different individuals, not just Mifsud, not just Halper, not just Downer, but apparently 3 other individuals. 2 of them identifying themselves as being from the Defense Intelligence Agency. And apparently one of those individuals offered Papadopoulos sex for information, offering him sex for information. Unbelievable. So apparently Papadopoulos has told the FBI every bit of this, which would be, of course, exculpatory evidence, which was not given to the FISA court. This is why we have to hold on in the midterms and win the House. Why we need to be wishing Paul Ryan goodbye and Gowdy goodbye and all the rest. We need to have Jim Jordan as Speaker. And this will all get aired out. And this is probably why we're getting such unhinged behavior by the Democrats. Them going to all these ridiculous efforts to try to do anything they can to save themselves. Because they know who comes out looking bad along with the FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA and all the rest. And there's foreign countries who were involved in this as well. The Democrats were involved in this up to their eyeballs with all the other perps. And they're doing everything they can to stop this truth from coming out. But it's not going to work. Not going to work. There's something else to think about here. Uncle Bob, the executioner, and the Hillary donor posse has seen all of this information. Which means Uncle Bob knows. Uncle Bob knows exactly what went down. He knows about the exculpatory evidence that was withheld to get the FISA warrants. Yet, he calls up none of that in his investigation. He doesn't hardly even mention Halper, as far as we know, or Downer. He only focuses on people around Trump and what they look like they did. And he goes after them. Despite the fact that during his investigation, he's had to have discovered all of this. Which means, in addition to exposing this plot and the perps who were involved in the plot itself, it's very likely that Uncle Bob the executioner is going to be exposed as being part of the cover-up. In other words, an extension of the original plot to cover up the plot. Because he knows every bit of this. He's seen all of this stuff. There's going to be hell to pay after we win the midterms. Hold the House, increase our lead in the Senate. Hopefully Jim Jordan is Speaker, and the President with the wind at his back now. I like the way things are looking right now. I really do. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate, and we'll see what happens next. See you guys. Bye.